Listen to me.
Okay. I'm listening. Sweetheart, let me handle it.
So, yes, as she said, I'm Tyler from JoBlo, and I actually saw your movie on opening night and had a blast with it.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, and so there's many moments that I could pick to talk about with you, but there's one more subtle moment that I kind of want to pick your brain about.
Sure.
It's when Sawyer is coming home from school on the bus, and you get to see that there's there's police outside, and she sees the dead body, and just her reaction and just that little tension of the buildup before she actually sees her father and sister. Like, what putting that scene together, can you just like tell me a little bit about it?
That was an interesting one. That was on like day 2 or something of shooting, day 3. It was the first time I think I was working with Vivian, who plays Sawyer, and I kind of had no idea what she was capable of, or you know, how I would work with her. And she you know, it's just this little moment, it's like a line in the script, and we were trying to make it, like you say, this moment of anticipation, this moment of kind of dawning dread on this younger character. And I was just amazed by how beautifully and subtly she was able to play that moment, and it was really the first inkling that I got of the kind of performance she was going to be able to bring to this movie. Because with kid actors, you know, it's weird even calling her a kid actor, because she doesn't she doesn't come across that way. She's so professional and so brilliant. But that was my first inkling that we were going to be able to get something really special working with her.
Yeah, I'd say she's the best child actor working today. Just phenomenal.
Oh, no question.
So originally this film was meant for streaming. So talk me through you getting the word that your movie would be receiving a wide theatrical release, because I feel like that's every director's dream.
Yeah, I think it was an interesting one. I think because of the King connection, and because Boogeyman is a great title, and because we had just a great team of people working on it, I always in the back of my head was making it for the big screen. I mean, I think every director, wherever their movie's going, they make it for the big screen, they make it for the cinema, because that's what we do. I always had in the back of my mind that maybe it being a King movie, it would find its way to theatrical. And there were kind of like whisperings of it at first. Really, it was our first test screening, went down really well. And, you know, a few of the execs from the studio were there, and there kind of were these hushed conversations going on. And it wasn't until Christmas of last year that I got a call. I got a call kind of around Christmas time, saying that it was going to go theatrical. And I was actually the last person to know. I think a bunch of my crew text me like, congratulations, and I had no idea what they were talking about. And then I got the phone call, and it just felt like after the test screens, which went down so well, and the audience were jumping and screaming, and just, it was such a great crowd movie. After those, it would have felt like a real kick in the teeth to go straight to streaming without the opportunity to play to more crowds. So it was a great thing, and it was where the movie, it was where the movie was destined to be. It's a great crowd movie.
Yes, it's one of my favorite theatrical experiences of the year. The crowd was just had so much fun throughout.
Oh, that's great.
And I would say it is very ballsy to start off your horror movie by killing a little kid. Can you talk about what went into that decision? Because I assume there's a lot of concern about that being too dark of a way to start it.
Yeah, well, we started out as an R-rated movie. That was all the discussions with this. This was an R-rated movie, and then pretty close to production, we got word that it had to be a PG-13. That, you know, it's the Boogeyman. It needed that broad appeal, and it actually kind of made sense to me. But I was a little worried about the cuts that were to come when we got into the edit. You know, they let us shoot all the same stuff we were planning for the R-rated version. We just toned down a bit of the violence, and it cut out a bunch of F words, and but still we were able to kill the baby at the beginning. I was like, there's no way this is going to stay in the movie. And in fact, the first cut that I showed the studio, they told me to cut that scene out because there was no way it would get past the MPAA. And I was like, just let me preview it. Let me preview it just so we can, because it will work. It will work and it'll get a big reaction, and then we can have the conversation. And it was, it was the scene that made the audience gasp the loudest, and somehow it got away with a PG-13 as well as all the kind of weird Cronenbergian body horror creature stuff at the end. So
yeah, that's shocking, honestly, because I don't really pay as much attention to rating these days. Yeah. So you saying that it was PG-13, I'm like, holy crap, I didn't even realize.
Yeah, right. No, you and me both.
Yeah, it's phenomenal what you were able to get away with. And so you're talking about you filmed a bunch of R-rated stuff. Does that mean there's potential for a director's cut down the road?
No. I mean, this is the R-rated version. That's the thing. We filmed it. The only thing that actually got cut out at script stage was
just the swear words.
Was the swearing. And
okay.
There were a couple of moments that were flagged that they said this probably won't make it in there. We can't. We probably can't throw a 9-year-old into a TV and have the audience think that they've been killed. We probably can't have the splat of blood as the infant is killed at the beginning. We probably can't have, the creature dislocating its jaw and all the squishy stuff at the end.
Yeah.
It all just got past the MPAA. To this day, I don't know how.
Yeah, Sawyer getting thrown into the TV is one of those moments that you can feel.
Yeah.
So did you guys just have like a smaller the stunt double to do that?
Yeah. But we did it all in camera. It's one shot, so the whole gag plays out. Creature jumps on Sawyer, so she's got a stunt. Real Sawyer takes a stumble, over the front of the couch, and we've got the legs, which are on a kind of zip line, whizzing across, and finally, so yeah, it was all done in camera, very carefully timed out. We had this like metronome going, so it all paced out just right. That's incredible.
And so, you mentioned it, and I'll throw up a potential spoiler tag in this, but I have to talk to you about the creature design because I like the moment that the mouth contorts and those hands come out, I was just blown away. So how did you guys come up with that design?
There was this great creature designer called Keith Thompson, he works with David Bruckner a lot. He did the creature in The Ritual, which I think is one of the great creatures. Yeah. He did a bit on the new Hellraiser, and he came up with this idea of we were kind of looking for a way that you could see the monster, because it's a PG-13 studio movie. You're going to want to see the monster at the end, and I wanted it to still be scary even though you'd seen it. So we were trying to come up with a way to show the creature but still have a kind of other dimension to this creature that you didn't quite understand or that was not revealed fully. And Keith Thompson came up with this idea of thinking that this creature had big bad wolf teeth, and then slowly they unfurl and you realize they're fingers. And from there, we kind of came up with this idea of the face within the face, and there being this almost Lovecraftian TARDIS-like inner dimension to the creature, this impossible body within the body that again just like suggests it's something much more cosmic that you don't understand. So you see the creature, but there's still this dark space that your mind can fill in.
Well, and so much about what that works with is that, the typical thing with a boogeyman is like reaching out from under the bed, like, and grabbing you. So then having that image of like, oh God, the hands that are grabbing you are from the mouth. Like that's what just works so well. It's
really creepy. And I love the way that the animators did that. It's such a great, there's almost like a kind of tenderness to the way those like little creepy kid fingers touch Sophie and grab at her.
Yeah, and I have to also commend you for your lighting on it, because clearly you guys didn't have as much of a budget for this, and it's a CGI creature. Keeping it in the dark just helps so much with that, because then if you show it in the light, then it reveals a little too much. So that was one thing I very much noticed. You were very, very smart about just how much of the creature you were showing.
Yeah, no, we were taking notes from Alien. That's the definitive. Keeping it hidden in the darkness.
Yeah, and so I've heard you say in other interviews that the glowing orb was originally meant to be a lightsaber.
Oh, yeah.
So obviously that completely changes the dynamic of some of these scenes, especially because, the ball is like rolling.
Yeah.
But also you've gotten some very iconic images with this glowing orb.
It's so much better. It's become the image of the movie. And it was just because, I'd completely forgotten that Vivian played Princess Leia, and they didn't want a Star Wars crossover in this movie, because this is a Disney movie, believe it or not. So
was that their only gripe with it? Was that it was Vivian?
I think they just didn't want, and then Sophie was in some Star Wars thing like that. I can't remember what it is, and they just didn't want I guess they didn't want their Disney princesses to be fighting monsters with a lightsaber. There was,
Yeah.
I don't pretend to understand these things, but in the end, we had to scramble for this new glowing object, and we just found on Amazon this like glowing moon ball, and it became suddenly we just had all these ideas for how to use it.
And so like the main scene that stands out to me with that the moon ball is the Sawyer on her bed and rolling it under.
Yes.
And so when you don't have that ball, what's that scene look like with a lightsaber?
She was kind of like waving it around. The lightsaber, I used to have a lightsaber when I was a kid, like a really crappy toy one.
Yeah.
And it would fritz all the time, and the light would kind of like strobe up and down. And so we had this idea of a scene where the lightsaber starts to strobe up and down, and it almost became like a lighthouse beam. It would kind of go, the light would go to the end of the corridor and then come back to her, and it'd be this kind of wash of light that would travel up and down the hall. So you would only get these little glimpses of what was ahead of her.
Yeah.
Which would have been cool, but I think the ball, the kind of tactility of rolling the ball, and then, like you say, you're not holding onto it anymore. Like that becomes the kind of central scare of the movie.
Yeah, I think that's the signature. It's like the signature piece of the film.
Yeah.
And so David Dastmalchian is only briefly in the movie, but leaves such an impact. And I know that he was reluctant to play another like messed up person. So can you talk about getting him to join the project?
Yeah, I mean, I've wanted to work with him for the longest time, and I knew that he was a fan of Host, and we'd never met, but he'd kind of been talking about how much he loved Host and wanted to work with me on something, and he was one of the first people that kind of came to mind for this part, and he's very different from the Lester Billings in the short story, and one of the things that made me think that and know that he'd be perfect for this is that he's got a real kind of like empathy to him, that even though he can be creepy and he can have this kind of potential threat of violence, he's also somebody that you kind of he can really make you care. And I wanted people to care about this character. I wanted him to come through that door and spend his 10-12 minutes on screen, and for him to really leave a mark, and for the audience to feel like he's a projection of where this family is going to be by the end of the movie, that his desperation is what's in store for Chris, the therapist, and for the younger sisters, while also being scary and unknowable, and the audience having that kind of hovering question about, did he kill his kids or not? And David's just so amazing. He can play all of those things and switch just in a moment.
Yeah, he is one of my favorite parts of it. But I have to mention one thing. I just have to talk about the Natalie character, because I'm not sure I've disliked the character more in a film this year, and I was hoping for some kind of comeuppance. Even like part of me was like, oh, maybe there will be a little tag where the boogeyman is going after her. So
that would have been good.
Yeah. So was there anything cut where she actually gets any kind of comeuppance?
We actually talked about it a lot, and after the first test screening, everyone, the moment when Natalie kind of gets her slap, the whole audience just cheered. They got to their feet and cheered because they hated her so much.
Yeah.
And we were talking about, is there a way you can kill her? But to be honest, it's like the whole movie hinges on this idea of like, is the boogeyman real? Do you believe in the boogeyman? As soon as you start piling up bodies of best friends, it starts to become really hard to walk that line. So we felt like, as much as it would be fun to see Natalie get torn apart by the creature, you've got to kind of hold off. But a post-credit sequence would have been great. Or maybe if there's a sequel, we'll have her torn to bits in
Yes, I plea for you. Open the sequel with going after Natalie. That would be open. Yes, that would be wonderful. And and both Sophie Thatcher and Vivian Blair have this like wonderful chemistry, and so were they able to like spend time together before filming, or was this all just come together on set?
No, I made sure of it. So I actually, while we were prepping the shoot, and while we were shooting the opening scene, the opening scene with the infant, which was the first thing that we shot. On those first days, I made sure that I basically kind of organized these family days for them. So they would get together and they would do activities, and they would go to the park, and they would go to the zoo, and they go to the aquarium, and just like spend time together and figure out how that dynamic, what that would look like. And yeah, Vivian and Sophie just bonded in a way that you can totally feel on screen. They all did. They really felt like a family unit by the end of the movie, which was just so important. You know, it's a movie that hinges on that sisterly relationship.
Well, thank you so much. This has been absolutely wonderful, and I'm really looking forward to whatever you guys do next.
Amazing. Thanks so much.
Yes.